Senator Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here today. To echo what my colleague Senator Kennedy said, I appreciate you actually securing our border. The work that President Trump has done, and you alongside him, to make sure that we don't have just an actual invasion happening every day, like we saw under the Biden administration. I believe we had about an average of 5,000 people a day that came over the border during the Biden administration, many of which are unaccounted for. When we're looking at kind of what is ahead of us, I've heard Senator Blackburn and others kind of bring this up to you, but I am thinking about the children that we know that came unaccompanied, many of them with a phone number written on their arm or taped to them. Senator Blackburn mentioned that the Biden administration did away with the DNA policies. We know many of these children have been trafficked into our interior. You mentioned the rape, that 30% of women, is that right? That came across our border were most likely raped in the process. The 4,000 people that died, the inhumane circumstances that were created, and the enriched cartels as a result. As a result of 4 years of the Biden administration, the cartels were stronger and more prosperous, and unfortunately had a greater grip on our interior. It is your job to make sure that we unwind that we keep American families safe, that we abide by the law, that we enforce the law. The way we do it matters. We have to do it the right way. There are countless families sitting behind you who have either had a loved one injured or lost because of the lack of enforcement of the previous administration. Do you commit to me today that you will ensure that no family has to go through this again, that you will use the tools at your disposal the right way to protect American citizens?
Yes, I will use every tool I have available to make sure that we're protecting as many Americans from having to go through what these families have had to go through.
And Secretary Noem, I want to talk to you about these children. Where are they?
Yeah.
We didn't have hearings about them under the previous administration. I want to know where they are. How many children do you think are in our interior unaccompanied for? Are they being sex trafficked, labor trafficked? Where are they?
Yeah.
And how many have you found? And what is your plan to find all of them? Every one of those children deserves to be seen, deserves to be found, and I appreciate the president's commitment to making that happen. I want to know what you're going to do to follow through with it.
We're going to continue to do our work. We found 145,000 of those children so far, identified them, returned them back to their loved ones, and taken care of them. We will continue until we find every single one of them. The Homeland Security investigations teams are the most specialized law enforcement officers for getting into these networks, these trafficking networks, and making sure that they're not just finding one child, but finding the network that is trafficking hundreds of children, and make sure that we're bringing them back home and helping them heal.
Well, let's actually talk about HSI. We have heard ICE be vilified across the nation, called Nazis, called Gestapos. I want to talk about ICE HSI for a second, because you just mentioned it. When we are looking at finding child predators, when we're looking at finding people who are exploiting children, when we're looking at cyber crimes, human trafficking, when we're looking at drug smuggling, weapon smuggling, HSI does the hard work, do they not?
Yes, they do.
I want you to see behind me. These are some of our most notorious and high-profile criminals in recent years. Sean P. Diddy Combs, El Chapo, R. Kelly, Jared Fogle, Josh Duggar, the Merchant of Death, Victor Boot. And what do all of these criminals have in common? All of them were brought to justice with the help of ICE, HSI. Does that sound like the work of Nazis or Gestapo, Madam Secretary?
No, it does not.
This sounds like an agency that is working for the American people, who is taking bad actors off the streets and is doing the hard work for our most vulnerable. Can you speak a little bit to the work that you've seen HSI do?
These HSI officers are, I believe, the most exceptional law enforcement officers that we have at the federal level. They specialize not just in identifying sex traffickers and human traffickers, but also any kind of money laundering, financial investment. They partner with our other intelligence agencies to use that information to build cases that we then win in prosecutions and hold those people accountable. And they all have families. They all have families that they care deeply about. And when you talk to them, they will go on and on about how they do their work to make sure that families in the United States can be safe and that they have a future and they can walk down the streets and continue to be entrusted that their kids won't fall victims like they see so many times in their work when they do these types of cases.
Changing gears a little bit, when we're talking about just immigration enforcement in general, I know I've had a number of questions from constituents over the weekend about the number of known and unknown terrorists in our interior. We know the numbers that came through the border, but we also know the countless numbers of known gotaways that we don't know who they are, where they're going, or what their intentions are. Madam Secretary, what we saw in Austin, I think, was chilling to so many people. We want to make sure that we are doing everything possible to locate terrorists in our interior and to obviously capture and get them out. Tell me what you're doing to make sure that happens and what the American people need to hear from you.
Well, first of all, Senator, let me thank you for your work to get the Department of Homeland Security funded so that we can use everything and every tool available to us to go after these threats that we face, both foreign and domestic. These individuals that we've brought to justice already include over 1,500 known and suspected terrorists that we have already found in the last year that President Trump has been in the White House, and we brought them to justice and removed them from our country. We also have thousands and thousands of gang members, MS-13, TDA members that have partnered to victimize people and perpetuate violence upon them. We're continuing to do that work and will every single day, but we need funding to make sure that all of our law enforcement agencies have the tools they do to bring them to justice.
Well, let's actually talk about that. So when we are looking at the department having gone unfunded now for 17 days, I'd like to know what are the real implications of that. So I think a lot of people, when you look at the Department of Homeland Security, we've obviously seen in the news, ICE and CBP. We just talked about some of the good work that ICE has done, particularly ICE HSI. We look at the border, customs protections, people coming through, making sure whether it is weapons being smuggled or whether it is drugs, that those things are caught by those men and women there at the border. Then we look at the other missions that fall under the Department of Homeland Security, our courageous men and women in the Coast Guard. You look at those serving in FEMA. We have been ravaged by storms both in the south and up the northeast, and these people need assistance and they need help. That all comes through your department. You look at the Secret Service and you look at where that is. You look at the Center for Domestic Preparedness, for example, in Anniston, Alabama, which I hope I have your commitment to continuing to make sure that our law enforcement officers are trained there in the event of something unthinkable.
Yes, and absolutely.
As we look at all of this and our TSA officers, I was struck by what I saw. Actually, you have put this up here behind me. When you see what's happening with people going without pay again. So you have people like a TSA officer that went without pay for 43 days in the previous Democrat-led shutdown. And here they go once again. The financial insecurity that comes from that is tremendous. We heard reports of officers sleeping in their cars at airports to save money on gas, selling their blood and plasma, and taking on a second job to make ends meet. Some are just recovering from the financial impact of a 43-day shutdown, and many are still reeling from it. We cannot put them through another such experience. And the last minute left, will you tell us the real implications of this shutdown on men and women that stepped up to serve our country in the highest way to keep our homeland safe and secure?
Yes, I'm grateful for our TSA law and security officers that are still showing up and doing their jobs, running those security checkpoints, even though they're not collecting a paycheck. A couple of the stories that I had heard when I spent time with them just in recent days was one individual whose wife needed cancer treatment, $1,200 treatment that he couldn't afford, and had to go and borrow money so she could get her cancer treatment because he wasn't getting his paycheck. Another individual who had 9 children was raising 2 of his grandchildren as well, that was struggling to pay his bills, took a nighttime job as a welder just to try to keep food on the table for the responsibilities that he had. These people joined TSA because of 9/11, because they wanted to be a part of keeping people safe in the United States and defending our homeland. Beyond that, FEMA, our ability to fund disaster response is virtually gone. It needs to be refunded. Our FEMA employees are out there doing work every single day, but we have 10,800 individuals that are funded out of the disaster relief fund that could potentially not be there for them and not respond to individuals who need it when they have those terrible storms or devastating crises.
Thank you for your work, and I'm hopeful that we can work with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to find a pathway forward to fund the
Senator
program.
Blumenthal.